I'm sorry? She was.
Oh, sorry.
All right. Hi, Haley. If you would please give your name for the record, and if you're representing somebody other than yourself, please tell us that.
Yes.
Also, are you a minor?
I am not.
Okay. Well,
Thank you.
gotta ask.
My name is Haley Worrell. I'm 27 years old, a wife, a mother of two, and as of this Wednesday, a law school graduate.
Congratulations.
Thank you. While this is a time of celebration for my family, it's also a moment of deep reflection and sadness because of the reason I went to law school is rooted in tragedy. In 2017, my oldest son was medically kidnapped by the Arizona Department of Child Safety. What followed was a cascade of systemic failures that led to my husband being wrongly convicted of child abuse, and he is now serving a 12-year sentence for a crime that never happened. On November 12, 2017, my husband and I, at only 19 years old, brought our 4-month-old son to the emergency room in Prescott, Arizona. He had woken up with a swollen arm. Before any x-rays were done, the emergency room doctor came in, assessed, and said that his arm was broken, and immediately contacted the police and DCS. From that moment forward, everything that happened was marked by a rush of judgment. The doctor refused to perform any other tests other than a full-body x-ray, tests that would have shown our son suffered from vitamin D deficient infantile rickets and hypermobility Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, both which he's since been diagnosed with. The initial full-body x-ray uncovered 4 rib fractures at various stages of healing, an arm fracture, and a fracture in his wrist. With one simple blood test, they could have discovered the explanation for the unexplained fractures and treated him like we anticipated when we had brought him in. The detective and the DCS investigator interrogated my 19-year-old husband for over an hour before he finally told him, "You and your wife are his main caretakers. It's either you or your wife going to prison for this. If you want your son and wife to go home safely, you need to tell us what you did." My husband falsely confessed out of fear for our safety, a threat which was meaningless as they placed him into foster care immediately after, despite his coerced confession. The family court judge implied during our first hearing that due process wasn't required in her courtroom when she stated that this is not criminal court. We do not need proof to take your child away. A gag order was placed.
I'm sorry. When did this case happen?
2017 to 2018.
The name of the judge?
Judge Anna Young.
I'm sorry.
Anna Young.
Okay. I'll send her a copy of the Constitution.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Please proceed.
A gag order was placed on us so that we could not speak out during this whole process. My parents, while gathering character letters to try to get placement of our son, was threatened with contempt of court because they were telling people that he was in foster care. A CASA representative screamed in fear upon seeing my husband out on bond during our first child family team meeting. Already labeling him an abuser with no trial or evidence, there was never a presumption of innocence for him. DCS caseworkers told me that I could have my son back if I left my husband and testified against him. They asked me to abandon my husband, that I had known and trusted since I met at church when we were 10 years old, and to testify differently than I believed in exchange for my son, something morally I could not do. Our family advocate summed it up early on when she told us, "You are not getting your son back. He is a healthy baby boy. He is adoptable." Our caseworker, with others during our case, posed proudly in t-shirts that they made for a photograph that said "Professional Kidnappers" on the front and on the back, "Do you know where your children are?" This was never about protecting a child. It was about preserving a narrative, their false narrative, and when the system decides what it wants to believe, truth becomes irrelevant.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Was that photo
Yes.
out on the internet?
Yes. It got national attention.
Oh, it certainly did. It got my attention.
Yes.
If you would, could you please see to it that staff receives a link or a copy of that photo?
Yes, I absolutely can.
Because I think that needs to be a part of the record.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, you have 3 minutes left.
Okay. My parents weren't granted custody for 11 months, despite being under the protection of the Indian Child Welfare Act, because they believed in our innocence. Only after passing multiple home studies, psychological evaluations, and making degrading sacrifices like agreeing to remove all the photos of my husband off of their walls, and having no personal contact with me or my husband, were they even able to get temporary custody of him. Even while in foster care, our son sustained 2 more fractures, but the focus remained on us, parents who had no contact with him at the time the fractures occurred. We complied with every demand that they assigned to me: parenting classes, counseling, psychological evaluations, drug testing, everything in the reunification plan. My husband wasn't allowed to participate, and a no-contact order was placed between our son and him, so he was not able to have supervised visitation like I was. We paid out of pocket for him to do everything that they assigned me. We paid for him to do still, so that they would see that we were committed to fighting for our son. And still, after jumping through their hoops with flying colors and no indication from any of their chosen professionals of an inclination for either one of us to be abusers, they denied us reunification with our son. At our severance trial, supervised visitation workers cried on the stand while testifying to my abilities to be a loving mother. It did not sway the judge. Before the trial, we were waiting for an expert report confirming our son's injuries stem from the metabolic bone condition, and the judge would not delay the trial to await for the evidence. The trial proceeded anyway before my husband's criminal trial and against the advice and opinion of the Foster Care Review Board, who recommended waiting for the outcome of the trial before proceeding with the severance trial. Because of this, he had to plead the fifth to every question. He obliged on every question except for one. They asked, "Did you hurt your son?" And he said, "No, I did not hurt my son." There are countless wrongs that occurred in our involvement in the family court system that I could name, but that would take all night, so I will leave you with one. Our final caseworker, the only one who had actually come to our home, had spoken to us. He assured us that he believed the truth would prevail. He listened to us, talked to us, and for once, someone believed in us. But on the stand, he testified that my husband was an abuser and that I was a danger for supporting him. We emailed him after we were shocked and betrayed, and his response was this: "Haley, I appreciate your comments. I do not believe there is anything I can say to help you understand my role. How I feel about you and your family is very different than how I was required to testify as a child safety specialist. Some of us DCS employees find ourselves in very difficult positions. If you hate me because of the trial, you are completely justified." That is the system in one single sentence. Even those who know the truth are required to lie under oath to protect the system in their rush of judgment, and not the child. Our son was not abused by his parents, but he was abused by the system that stole him from a loving home and by a system that robbed him of his father. He is still being victimized every weekend when, instead of waking up with his dad, he only has 4 hours in a prison visitation room before crying and hugging his daddy goodbye. Even more than that, our youngest son, who was not taken from us, has become yet another victim of the system, who was robbed of his father and moments with his father. While he took his first breath in this world, his dad was sitting in a prison cell waiting for the prison guard to let him make a 15-minute phone call to check on his wife and son's safety after birth. Both of our children suffer every day without their dad, and because a procedural bar is so high for appeals, we are still left without relief. I went through 6 years of law school to help make a change in the system, and I am not in the position yet to make that change, but you are. Today, you have the power to take the first step towards accountability and justice for Arizona families like mine, for Arizona children like mine, who wish at every wishing well that we find for their daddy to come home. Please be the voices for the families who were, and will be silenced, and to ensure no other child becomes collateral damage in the system that's supposed to protect them. Thank you.
Members, any questions?
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Fink?
I guess I'm just kind of flabbergasted that after the diagnosis of the Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is very much well documented, that not everything was reversed. Can you explain a little bit why they did not take that into consideration?
Yeah. So it actually just went in front of the criminal conviction, went in front of the Court of Appeals, and because of the procedural bar of how they view newly discovered evidence, it has to be newly discovered means that it cannot have been brought up in trial. And so to them, the issue of metabolic bone conditions was brought up at trial by the state's experts, and they had said that he did not have any. Even though it was different kinds of testing, they said that the issue of genetic testing had been discussed at trial, so it was not new evidence. So it was a procedural bar. They said that it would make a difference, and that it was, during oral arguments, they said that it would make a difference and that it was relevant, but in their opinion, it was not, it couldn't count because it was brought up at trial.
I'm flabbergasted. Anyway,
Another question? You done?
I'm done.
Thank you.
Hold on. I wanted to give my colleagues first bite at this apple.
Absolutely.
Have you examined, I'm not, at the risk of provoking a lawsuit, have you given any thought to an action against the physician who failed to recognize that your son had such a malady?
We've definitely thought about that, and that is something that we're working through right now. We've focused solely on trying to get my husband home to his babies, but now that we got our son in a safe place with my parents, and that I'm able to live with them, our focus right now is on him, and then eventually we will think about all of this for the, my grandparents' drained retirement or our sold house to try to cover all the legal bills. That's something that we can think of in the future.
So tell me a little bit more about that, if you don't mind, ma'am.
The
You had to
financial
sell your
drain.
house, your financial ruin, it sounds like.
Yeah, my grandparents, thankfully for them, thankfully for us, had saved up quite a retirement, and it's almost all gone. My grandparents had to go through a cancer treatment for my grandma and almost didn't have enough because they had used all of it on lawyer funds. My parents had been taking money out of their 401k and having to be penalized for that, of course. We had to sell our home to pay for lawyer bills as well, and it just doesn't stop. Experts, all of that costs money.
So I want to make sure that I heard what I think I heard. That Judge Young
Yes.
told you that you have no civil rights in her courtroom?
The very first courtroom, they sat us all down and they asked us if we had anything to say.
And this was on the record?
Yes,
or
this was on the record.
conference?
This was on the record.
Okay.
The first attorney, the attorney for DCS, he didn't have anything to say. The guardian at Lidum, she stood up. She said normally she would move to sever a case like this immediately, but she wanted to dig up some more dirt on the mother, me, the 19-year-old. And so being shocked, I didn't say anything. My husband was next, and he said, "Your Honor, I didn't hurt my son." And that is when she made the comment, "Mr. Worrell, this is not like criminal court. I do not have to prove that you did anything to take your son away."
And of course, you now know otherwise.
Yes.
Okay. I guess the next question I have for you. Did the court itself or representatives of the court attempt to turn you against your husband?
Yes.
Okay. All right, Haley, if you would, please don't. Do you need to run off? I know
No.
it's a trip up the hill.
No,
No?
I'm good.
All right, I would like to have you speak to our staff so that we can get your information. I would like to get a copy